Game of Thrones Season 7 Episode 2 Stormborn was epic. I enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. In this video, I want to discuss some of my favorite moments from Episode 2 of Season 7. Now, I understand that there was a storm her first night there. She just came from this super sunny environment over in Marine where it was sunshine all the time. I do think that she was being very spoiled last night, like very brattish and bitchy. You know, she did call out Varys, which I'm glad that was addressed because this was their first scene together and a lot of us were anticipating what words were going to be shared. Was it going to be brought up that he attempted to poison her back in Season 2? And sure enough, it was. So, I'm glad that Varys was able to stick up for himself. And before we leave Dragonstone, we have Daenerys meeting with Melisandre, and Melisandre drops bombs on us as always. I thought she may switch camp and be fully Daenerys, but I was proved wrong. She's both Daenerys and Jon, and she tells them that her and Jon Snow have a major role to fill. Daenerys seems to be vibing a little bit on Jon Snow already before they even meet. It's awesome the implications this may mean on our story. The prince who was promised prophecy is actually gender neutral. It goes both ways, so it's referring to Jon Snow and Daenerys. The fact that they have to work together is going to make the union of ice and fire. Then we have the usual scheming behind everyone's back with Cersei spinning her web to the still loyal lords of Westeros that remain loyal to the crown, rather, and she's trying to position herself innocent because the Tyrells are rebelling against the crown. Daenerys is bringing a screaming horde of rapists, and we all know the Ironborn reeve and rape. Daenerys is a threat to Westeros, and Cersei is trying to spin her web. We all need to rally together. You guys may not like me, but she's far worse than I am. We have scenes from Samwell at the Citadel, and it's pretty much similar to the last episode we saw him in, except for this time, he actually goes in and Jorah announces who he is. Some words are exchanged, and the way the scene was written makes a lot of sense because Sam was at Craster's Keep while Jorah's father's last moments on Earth were happening. So it makes sense that Samwell would risk getting kicked out of the Citadel. With Samwell's behavior in this episode and in the last episode, it doesn't seem like he wants to be there long because he's doing everything in his power to risk getting kicked out. You know, he snuck into the Forbidden Book section, and this time he's specifically going against the word of Archmaester Ebrose when he told him that Jorah, there's no help for him and there's no cure. And the reason why the procedure that Sam wants to try on Jorah, the reason why no one wants to do it and it's banned is because the Archmaester who did that procedure actually died from grayscale in the process. Grayscale itself is like something from an alien sci-fi movie. I will say that I hope Samwell doesn't contract grayscale just from doing this procedure. When they peeled it back and all that ooze and stuff came out, I almost wanted to vomit. I don't really want to talk too much about this scene because it makes me very sad for what potentially may be happening to Daenerys' dragons in the future. But it was revealed in the episode that Cersei does have an anti-dragon weapon. I, along with most people, thought that it might involve wildfire because we knew wildfire does burn crazy and Cersei has used it in the past. And, you know, there's that old phrase, fight fire with fire, but it's wrong. Cersei will in fact be using a ballista to fire a 7-foot-long bolt into the skull of Drogon Viserion or Rhaegal. She actually blew a hole to Balerion the Black Dread and into his brain cavity, and Balerion is supposed to be the biggest dragon ever. So I think what the show is trying to promote here is that Drogon will be the size of Balerion, if not a little bit bigger. Daenerys' dragons now have something extra to worry about. One of my favorite scenes of the show was Tyrion planning to conquest Westeros. Tyrion is a master planner. He had everything figured out. And it was cool because two of the people that were the most anxious to get in and do battle with Cersei, he put them on the front lines. His plan is basically to go the opposite of the route Cersei was going. Cersei is planning on Daenerys invading King's Landing with savages so that she can use that as even more of an alibi to get more lords to rally to her cause. Tyrion knew that ahead of time and was like, hey, let's make it look as though King's Landing is getting invaded by Tyrell and the Martells. Two of the biggest houses in Westeros are going to be attacking the capital. Now that makes a lot of sense because most folks are going to wonder, like, why are these great houses of Westeros attacking King's Landing? There must be something going on. Then we're treated to a quick reunion of Arya and Hot Pie. I enjoyed the reunion, but my favorite part about this moment was the fact that Hot Pie was the one to deliver the news to Arya that Jon Snow led an army of wildlings and took back Winterfell. The look on her face was priceless. I enjoyed this scene very much. Earlier on in the episode, Jon Snow received a letter from Daenerys asking him to come to Dragonstone and bend the knee. Then we're shown Jon Snow again, where he's receiving the letter from Samwell telling him about the Dragonglass on Dragonstone, which is ironic. I feel like Davos should have spoke up sooner, and Sam actually has a scene with Stannis where Stannis tells him that there's loads of Dragonglass on Dragonstone. Sansa clearly hasn't learned anything from the last time that she spoke out of turn, and there's not necessarily something wrong with it. It's just that Jon Snow is the king, and if you're constantly undermining the king because you're his sister, you're kind of taking advantage of that, and that makes him look bad. So you know what? As soon as Sansa speaks out of turn, Lord Jon Roy stands up and says we shouldn't trust a Targaryen. So I think that the fact that Sansa had spoke out of turn made it so that everyone else feels freely to speak their mind, which that's a good thing, because I want it to be, even though he's a king, he obviously has everyone in on his council. He doesn't have a small council, he has a large council, so everyone can kind of, you know, share their thoughts and ideas. And Daenerys is running her campaign the same way. She's allowing all of her advisors to speak their own opinions, and that's the best way to have a leadership run. You know, Daenerys tells Varys that if she ever fucks up, she wants Varys to let her know instead of conspiring behind her back. I think Jon Snow is going to be straightforward like that in the same way. It's great that they are allowing other people to influence their decisions, other people that they trust. I do, however, agree with Sansa that it could be dangerous for Jon Snow to go and meet with her. Sansa uses a very good example of their grandfather. He met with a Targaryen and he was burned alive. The difference was that he was the Mad King and Daenerys is not the case. So I don't think that Sansa should have spoken out of turn again, but I do agree with what her concern was. And also, I'm actually kind of glad that Lyanna disagreed with him, because it proves that she's not just a Jon Snow fangirl. She's a little girl in of herself, but she can also think independently. She said to Jon that our King of the North should remain in the North. Jon Snow, of course, disagrees with Lyanna, and he leaves Sansa in charge as acting Queen of the North, which was almost like humble pie that Sansa had to eat, because when Jon did that, it proved to her that Jon Snow does trust her. He does think that she knows what she's talking about, and now she's left in charge of Winterfell. We finally get that moment that we've all been waiting for from the trailers, where Littlefinger gets shoved up against the wall by Jon Snow. I predicted that the trigger would be that he snuck up on Jon Snow, and Jon's reaction would be to slam him up against the wall. That was not the case. What made Jon Snow triggered was the fact that Littlefinger said, "I love her mother as much as I love her." So that Jon Snow snapped on that. He said, "Don't lay a hand on my sister or I'll kill you myself." So that's, you know, Littlefinger, the type of dude that he is, that's going to make him want to go and manipulate Sansa even more. I do think that Littlefinger may be dealt with without Jon Snow even having to be there. I think that speech that Sansa gives him about how the lone wolf dies alone but the pack survives, I think that may be taking place next episode. Another one of my favorite moments of the show is when Arya meets up with Nymeria. Now that wolf that initially comes up to her, the white wolf we were shown from the preview trailer last week, that was not Nymeria. Props to myself for calling that out. But what Arya meant when she said that's not her, she's referring to Nymeria going home. Nymeria is not going to leave her pack. Nymeria is not a solo wolf. She's now the leader of a pack of wolves. So it's not in her character to want to go home. Just like with Arya, before she had heard the news that Jon Snow took back Winterfell, it was not in her character to want to go home. I do think that there's a chance that Arya could potentially bring Nymeria into the fold, and I think how this may happen is Arya may start to experience wolf dreams. My all-time favorite moment of the episode was definitely the end scene with Euron. His timing was impeccable. Right as everyone was getting down and getting dirty, right when we were about to potentially see Ellaria and Yara's boobs, bam! Euron shows up and enters the fray. I will say I want to thank him for killing 2 of the Sand Snakes. He did punch one of them in the face. He punched the bad Posey in the face, which was a little bit shocking. I can't believe he did that. Euron was saying, the actor who plays him, Pilu, was saying in interviews that Euron is a worse villain than Ramsay and Joffrey. I could totally see that. This dude is not afraid to fight. This was probably one of the best battle scenes of the TV show. I know it was a relatively small scale, but Euron ravaging through those ranks of Ironborn who betrayed him was insane. He ends up fighting Yara. Yara holds her own for the most part, but then he ultimately ends up getting the better of her and holding a knife to her neck, and Theon is right down on the edge of the boat and runs up and confronts them, and Euron gives him the choice, like, come forward, try to save her. And I think there might have been a little hint of Yara making a certain move that made Theon jump. I want to believe that Theon didn't just regress and go back to Reek. I want to still think that Theon is Theon, and the reason why he left is because Yara wanted him to live to fight another day. The sex scene between Grey Worm and Missandei was a little bit awkward. I do appreciate getting to see that much of Natalie Emmanuel, but ultimately I felt like it might have taken up a little bit too much time when we only have such few episodes left. All in all, I give this episode a 10 out of 10. It was another setup episode, but it was way more action-packed, plus we got the bonus battle scene at the end, unlike in episode 1. If you are enjoying my content here on YouTube and you would like to show your support, you can click the link down below and that'll take you to my Patreon, where any amount of support that you can show will be greatly appreciated. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Please, slap a like on this video, make sure you're subscribed, and then go ahead and turn your notifications on so you get notified every time I drop Game of Thrones content on this channel. If you would like to enter my contest for once I reach 10,000 subscribers here on YouTube and you can win this lovely Daenerys Dark Horse figurine, all you have to do to enter that contest is like this video, make sure you're subscribed, turn your notifications on, and then leave a comment down below. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews.